The year is 2017. A government committed to either reforming Britain's relationship with the EU or, failing that, a referendum on whether or not to leave altogether is in power. But what might that renegotiation process look like, and how might the talks pan out? Well, we can give you a glimpse of how it might work, thanks to the think tank Open Europe. They organised a role-playing exercise, a war game, if you like, each to his own, which tried to get as close as it could to what might actually happen in just a few years' time. We sent our David to take a look.
European leaders gather round the conference table to thrash out one of the most important political issues of our time, the future of the EU and Britain's place within it.
These talks have one simple but vital aim: to determine Britain's future relationship with Europe. Can it renegotiate and stay in, or does a British exit from the EU, the Brexit, become a reality?
OK, this isn't for real. It's a war game organised by the think tank Open Europe. But after the next election, something very like it could happen.
We bring people in who play briefs from each of the major countries in Europe, and they have to play in character for a number of hours negotiating the fundamental issues over the European reform. So the French player, for instance, is obstreperous. The Dutch player just wants everyone to get along. And the British player is trying hard to stay in Europe, but on her terms. And so that's very accurate. And to see what begins to happen so we can look at the simulation and see, is this how the real world's really going to work or not?
First, renegotiation, keeping us in a reformed EU. Britain was played by Tory MP Andrea Leadsom, and it seemed to be going quite well. Until this happened.
If Britain is the only country not taking part in the Eurozone, and we haven't found a new architecture to the EU, then we will not hold Britain back to leave the EU. This is as simple as that.
Which left Britain somewhat dischuffed.
Is that really what France thinks? That, you know, in spite of the fact that Britain has a permanent opt-out of ever joining the euro, is it really France's national position that if we're simply not prepared to change our minds, then we may as well leave the EU?
But not entirely alone.
The real wild card was the Nordic region negotiator, who was extraordinarily supportive and actually quite antagonistic towards the French position, which is, you know, just kick Britain out anyway.
You enjoyed that, didn't you?
I did, actually, yeah. I was really cheering inside for her.
Which took us on to part two of the exercise, the negotiation of a British exit from the EU altogether, led by former Foreign Office Minister David Heathcote-Amery, and around the table, not popular.
OK, you will be global, but you will be more and more British and more isolated, I think.
Despite that, David thought the only way for us to stay in was to threaten to get out.
I think they'll only get serious if they really understand that if they don't deliver a very substantial package of reforms, we will leave.
So, after all that, what did we learn?
Both choices are excruciating. Rather than it being simple, we'll just negotiate or we'll just leave, it won't be simple at all. And it will be a near-run thing and very tough to make this decision. And whatever you do, there will be negatives and pluses to doing it. And if that's all that came out of this, it was well worth the time.